Come, join our party, share a miracle.
And we're told the reason is because Chanuka, in a sense, is the holiest of all the holidays. It's the most spiritual. It's all about oil, right? The miracle was with the oil. The menorah is with the oil. Oil symbolizes the deepest, deepest, deepest secrets of God that came out for the first time by Chanuka. It's actually very interesting. Last week, we celebrated the 19th of Kislev, right? We spoke about the Rosh Hashanah for the Hasidic calendar. Well, that 19th of Kislev is really a continuum of what began on Hanukkah. And we start revealing the oil. By Hanukkah, it's just drops, drops, drops. It just flavors the food. We don't drink it straight. Drinking oil straight would not be healthy. By the 19th of Kislev, of course, long time later, we're told drink the oil straight. We could just take this inner dimension of God and take it straight. At the same time, even though it's so spiritual, and therefore there's no obligation for meals, people celebrate with food. And therefore, the Rambam writes, in halacha, in Jewish law, you should have a lot of gatherings, parties, eat, celebrate, and it's a really auspicious time. And before today, I was thinking like, well, what are we going to do? You have to make like a program for a party, right? And I'm like, no, the only thing I can think of Hanukkah is miracles. Thought of this, I thought of that. I'm like, no, I'm back to the regular routine, same channel, same concept, because Hanukkah is miracles. It was actually very special today. Someone reached out to me, not from this class, but from another class I give. And she said, I don't remember saying this, but she said that I said last year, Hanukkah, that the class, I was talking to the class, something about like, they should think on Hanukkah of the miracles they want and write them down and look at it a year later on Hanukkah. Mm-hmm. And she said she looked at it today. She had written down 3 miracles. And of the 3, one was the most improbable, like for sure could not happen. And she said it happened. Wow. It happened. So it was just like an affirmation that Hanukkah is about miracles. So we've got 8 days, and every day I turn to God and I say, okay, I'm so excited. I want to see miracles in this and miracle. I give him a long list, like give him lots of opportunities. Miracles in this and miracles in this and miracles in this and everything I want to see. So you don't have to write it down? I don't write it down. There's another time of year when we do write it down. Oh, thank you, Lucia. And that's the 23rd of Sivan. We write down, actually, that's for a different reason. That's connected to the holiday of Purim. The holiday of Purim, after the miracle, when Haman is gone, but there's still this decree looming over their heads, which somehow Ahasuerus felt incapable of rescinding, because obviously he really didn't want to rescind it, but that's a separate story. So on a certain day, finally, he said, okay, Mordechai, whatever you want, you can write down, and I, as the king, say it will be. That day was the 23rd of Sivan. Mordechai is the ultimate Jew. He's a Jew. The king, throughout the Megillah, throughout the story of Purim, is God. God's name is not mentioned in the story of Esther, not even once. You cannot find the word God in the entire book. There's 10 chapters. We don't mention God once, or 9 chapters. I think 10. But according to Kabbalah and Hasidus, every time it mentions the king's name, Achashverosh, he was wicked. He was horrible. He was cruel. But in an indirect way, because he's the ultimate king, he was literally the king of the world, it represents God. So whenever it talks about the king in the story, on a certain level, it's always God. Like when it says, at the night the king couldn't sleep, the sleep of the king was disturbed. So we're told spiritually, it's as if God's sleep was disturbed. God couldn't sleep. God was awake, taking care of the needs of the Jews, so to speak. So on the 23rd of Sivan, when Mordechai writes whatever he wants, and the king says, yes, whatever you write will be, Lubavitcher Rebbe says, that is every Jew. And that king is God. And every year on the 23rd of Sivan, write the decrees, write whatever you want. Sivan? 23rd of Sivan. 23rd of Sivan, write it, and so it will be. And that I also do suggest. And I had a woman in the same, another class, that she told me, before the 23rd of Sivan, that she looked at the list she wrote last year, and she said almost everything happened. So yes, we got to remind you of that, the 23rd of Sivan.
And the day of Hanukkah, though,
what the special day in the 23rd is? I understand the Rebbe said, but there is,
because on the 23rd of Sivan is when Mordechai wrote down whatever he wanted, his decree, and the king said, yes, whatever you write, that's going to be the law. So it's as if every Jew is that Mordechai, and we're writing whatever we want, and whatever we want, that is the law, that is what God is going to do. And therefore, I am careful every year on the 23rd of Sivan to write a long decree with many, many, many clauses of all the things that God is going to do, because it's the 23rd of Sivan. It's a very, very, very powerful day. But now that's a Purim issue. But Purim and Hanukkah are very connected, so it makes sense we can speak from one to the other. But on Hanukkah, it really is the energy of miracles. It was really, of course, this group probably knows more about the story of Hanukkah than most people in the world, because we learned it in our Jewish history class. Remember, we went through the whole backstory of Hanukkah. We learned it. We did a 4-part series last year on Hanukkah, again, both historically and spiritually. Of course, all we need to do is remember, and then all is good. Maybe I should put on our group some of those old classes.
but Sivan is after Purim.
Yes, it is. In other words,
End of June.
right. In other words, in Purim, when we celebrate the 14th of Purim,
So any night of Hanukkah?
every night of Hanukkah, every day of Hanukkah is a day of miracles.
No,
If-
I mean, right, to write the list.
Oh, yeah, any night, any night. In a sense, the most powerful day of Hanukkah is the last day. The last day of Hanukkah, when all 8 lights are burning, is the most powerful one. It has a special name. It's the only day of Hanukkah that has a special name. So it has the most power. But every day is special. Every day has the energy of miracles.
Zot Hanukkah, right?
Zot Chanuka, exactly. It has its own name, it has its own power, and it has a very special power. Purim didn't happen yet by the 23rd of Sivan. I'm going backwards. Mordechai vanquished Haman on the second night of Pesach,
Right.
right? That's Tes Zayin Nisan. We had the rest of Nisan, and we have Iyar, and we have most of Sivan. So it's almost 3 months before Achashverosh finally comes up with this plan, because he said, well, I don't know what to do. Like, it's a law. Like, I don't know what to do. Once there's a law, there's nothing I could do about it. And then finally he said, okay, this is what you can do. We'll make a new law. We still have the old law. The old law is they can destroy any, kill any Jew they want and take all their possessions. The blood is free. But now we're making a new law. And that was the 23rd of Sivan. And then months later is the miracle of Purim. So it's a special day. And now that we're talking about it, I wrote it down also. So I will remind everyone before the 23rd of Sivan to write down your decrees for God to say, yep, you're a Jew, you're the Mordechai, I'm the king, it's going to be. But right now, we're going to tap into the miracles of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah, as we know, and as I said, we know a lot about Hanukkah. They were massive miracles. There was all the miracles after miracles after miracles of the war. And there was the miracles of the oil. And the miracle of the oil was like almost like, it was just like God saying, I love you. Because there was no need for it. The miracles of the war were like mandatory. Our life was on the line. They have this massive army. We have nothing. They have troops and troops and troops. We have a few ragged band of, scholars. And somehow we won. But that was a mandatory miracle. That was the only way Judaism was going to survive. The menorah was just God's way of saying, I love you. I love you. Because the Jews really went beyond what they needed to do, which of course stimulated God to do beyond what he needed to do. Because at that point, technically, the whole story is like, well, they couldn't find any pure oil. They couldn't find any pure oil. They didn't need to find pure oil. Everybody was impure. No, Israel wasn't pure at this point. Everyone had been defiled. In such a situation, they were allowed to use, this is a secret, guys, that people don't usually talk about, they were allowed to use impure oil. Generally, but in that situation, they could use impure oil in the menorah. They said, no, no loopholes, no cutting corners. We are rededicating the temple. We're only using the purest oil. And if we have to wait 7 days, We have to wait 8 days because it takes 8 days for it to be produced. We'll wait 8 days. And then they search and they find one flask. And they're like, okay, cool. Do we light it now? And then not light it for 7 days? We have it. We're going to light it. And then God said, you know what? You're doing so much to show how much you love me. I can show how much I love you. And then it burned and burned and burned. So this is a time of miracles. So I think it's really nice in a time of miracles to share miracles, to share the miracles we've experienced. The Bhavata Rebbe says that's a really wonderful thing to do over Hanukkah, is share, because every time as we share miracles, we sort of remember the power of the miracles. And we remember that miracles are really happen in our life. You know, Leah Rubashkin, the wife of Shlomo Mordechai Rubashkin, she went to visit the woman who unfortunately had this horrible accident. I don't know if you heard, and is very, still in very, very critical condition.
Recently.
Yeah. And she said to her husband, and then she said to the woman, she said, I want you to know that my husband, on whatever year it was, said the first day of Hanukkah, I believe, is when he received word that there were no more appeals. His last appeal was rejected, and he was going to be in prison for another 28 years. He was going to leave prison a very old man. And that's it. And there's no more appeals, and there's nothing to do. And every appeal they had done had been rejected, and that was it. They were not able to appeal anymore. It was it. It was his death sentence. That was the first day of Hanukkah. And on the last day of Hanukkah, he left a free man. And I said, just that you should know that it's always possible. God is very powerful and, of course, very creative. And whatever we're looking for and we're believing in and we're trusting in, it happens. And I've just seen lately with some people, just literally they've created miracles. Well, I say they've created miracles. Of course, God creates the miracles. But I feel they've created the miracles because our belief is really the fuel that enables God to give us the miracles. It's our belief that really pushes it through. Obviously, it's coming from God. But as we believe, the power of belief really, really, really makes things happen. So anyone would like to start to share something they experienced in their life? We have Rena and Miriam and Bella. Any of you could start? Or we have anybody here could start. An even split. We have to find them, because why? Not that we don't have miracles. Of course, some things are private, you're not going to share, which is totally appropriate. A miracle you feel comfortable sharing. But why do we want to focus on the miracles we've had? Because it's our way of saying to God, we remember, we appreciate. And as we say, we still remember. That might have been a while ago, but we still remember and we appreciate. This opens up the channels for more and more and more to flow. And that's why it's really, 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 really a very important exercise, specifically on Hanukkah. I'm thinking of Beryl. I hear him upstairs. So I'll share one of the many, many, many things, the Beryl miracles. Again, you can say a miracle. What does it mean, a miracle? How do you define a miracle? But I viewed it as very kind of God. So I viewed it in the category of not just natural. So of course, there's so many Beryl stories, as there are with every child. The one I just popped into my head now, so obviously it's the one I'm supposed to share. From when Beryl was very young, he knew that he had a hearing loss. And and we're just waiting for his ears to get big enough to put in hearing aids. And when his ears would get even bigger, then they could do an operation and you put in tubes in his ears, and then hopefully that would help. So as he gets a little bigger, he's a very, very, very small baby. And then he has the hearing aids. And then, no, you have to wait. Okay, I kept on every time I went to the ENT, and I kept going, I don't know, every 2 months, every month, kept going back to the ENT. Is he big enough? Is he big enough? Is he big enough to be able to put these miracle tubes in his ears? Because once he has them, then hopefully he'll be able to hear much better. And finally, one of my visits, she said, he's big enough. Like his teensy tiny ears, because they were really incredibly small. He's big enough. And then she said to me, so do you want to do it? And sometimes the way she said it made me a little bit like, I thought I'm supposed to be so excited. The way she said it, I'm like, wait, maybe there's a catch. You know, like since he was literally less than 2 months old, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And now that he's big enough, she's like, obviously, the way she said it, I don't know, it just like set up like little alarms in my brain. So I'm trying to quickly think, why wouldn't I want it? I'm like, oh, I'm obvious question. I'm like, what type of anesthesia do you put him under? And she said, oh, well, obviously general. I mean, this is I'm like, general anesthesia? He's so little. I'm like, I don't know if I want it now. And then, of course, he started putting pressure on me. He's putting pressure on me. He's putting pressure on me. And I was like, I actually, in the end, they kept so much pressure. This went on for months that I actually switched to a different doctor, University of Chicago, top doctor. And in the beginning, she wasn't putting pressure on me. Then she started putting pressure on me. And I held out, I said, I'm holding out until he wears a size 3. Something in my head, if he wears a size 3 clothing, he's big enough. But until then, he's still too little for general anesthesia. So I'm waiting.
So size 3 is like 3 years old?
For most kids, it's 3 years old. But for him, it was probably more like when he was like 4.5, 5. Yeah. So I remember I was waiting until we began to the size 3 clothing. And I kept checking it. He's not there yet. He was in size 2 for years. I remember he was in size 2 for years. It's probably about 5 when he hit size 3. So anyway, I'm waiting. In the meanwhile, right? Literally within like a month or so before he was big enough, this ENT that I was going to in downtown, who's very, very good, very top, she said, I think there's something with his breathing. Does he have problems sleeping at night? I'm like, no, he's a perfect sleeper. He has no issues. She says, why don't you do a sleep study test? Fine, but all right. Anyway, we did the sleep study test, and lo and behold, we found he wasn't fine. And he needed his tonsils and adenoids removed. And then right then he turned to size 3. And I was like, wow, look at that. Look how kind God was. I didn't want to put him under general anesthesia. So I was waiting, and it put in my brain this funny idea when he's a size 3, he's going to be big enough. Right when he turns a size 3, I find out he needs another procedure that they would have put him under general anesthesia for. So what was I able to do? We did it all at the same time. So we did the tubes and the tonsils and the adenoids all at the same time, just when he turned size 3. So that was the first tremendous kindness of God in the situation. But the kindness, and I'll call it here the miracle, because to me this was completely a miracle, continued. So we have this operation that, again, I had been pushing off for years. I was so like stressed over because I just didn't want him under general anesthesia because he's so little. And then when the doctor finishes, oh my gosh, his ears were so tiny, like I've never seen such tiny tubes. She says, and you should know, probably in 6 months we're gonna have to do this again. I'm like, what? After all this? She's like, I'm like, why? She said, well, over time the ear grows, and then the tubes don't fit anymore, and then they fall out, and then you do it again. Every 6 months. We never did it again. Never had to do it again. And every once in a while, like every 6 months, we come from that day on until today. Every time he has a hearing test, his hearing is perfect. And at a certain point, maybe a year or 2 or 3 later, I said something to her about the tubes. She said, the tubes fell out years ago. I said, so what happened? She said, I don't know. But,
just opened them.
So Hashem's miracles. He knew how much I didn't want to do it more than once. He said, okay, once we have to do to give nature a little space. And after that, we can just sort of under the table, covertly deal with the issue. Hashem, even when we're not asking for it, I didn't ask him for that miracle. He just knew how much I didn't want another surgery. So he took care of it. Thank you, God. The miracle should continue for every single person. All right. So that was one of my many stories. Someone else, can they please share something they remember that God did for them or for someone they love?
I'd like to share one of miracles. My daughter lives in New Jersey with her family, and her way back to the jump is slower than mine. And when my grandson was like 7 months old, they wanted to put him in a daycare. She was looking for any daycare, and she had her own criteria. and her criteria wasn't Jewish, right? Whatever, I don't know, open playroom or some kind of natural cradle and stuff like that. And she lives in a town, Hoboken, but no Jews live there. She's not Jewish town. But Hashem very lovingly put a Chabad house in like kind of like an outskirts of the Hoboken, covers Hoboken and Jersey City, but it's physically in Hoboken. And this Chabad house has a whatever daycare for little babies from whatever, I don't know, has from several months and up. And it's Chabad, and it has all the
All the things she wanted.
what she wanted with whatever beds and playroom and other things. I have no idea what was on that list. This Chabad daycare covered all the bases more than other daycares, plenty in that town, but this one covered everything. And it happened to be Chabad.
That's so beautiful. Wow. That's amazing. Are they still there?
And I'm still praying, and they're still there.
That is amazing.
They actually, this year, she had also was something she wasn't happy about, and she started looking around, and she told me that she's going to move him to a different one. And I said, I'm going to keep praying. And don't know how it happened. He kept going to the same school.
Wow. It's amazing. You know how powerful that is. There's a woman that I know that she started becoming religious when she was in her like late 40s, 50s. Very successful woman, very successful one. And we were close. Oh, okay. Well, I'm only talking to you, but yeah. So we were close. And I asked her, well, I think I remember she was by my house. She was, I don't know I'm doing this, but there's nothing to do with it. We were close. And I asked her once, just randomly, like, you know, what inspired you? Like a lot of times somebody's inspired because they're going through something hard in their life. And therefore they turn to God. There's a health issue. There's a financial issue. There's something with a child. Some crisis is going on, and that makes them feel vulnerable. And that makes them realize, wait, there's a God to turn to. But that wasn't her story. Like she was very successful, had a very put together, successful life on, you know, all the basic levels. So what inspired her? And she said, I'll tell you, it was my preschool teacher. She said, when I was very young, like before the age of public school, my mother needed to put me somewhere. And it happened to me that the only preschool she found was religious, was a Jewish religious preschool. Again, she didn't put me in for any reason besides she needed to put me in a preschool. And she said, I know because of that I returned. She said, it's been in the back of my head for all these years. So I don't like, she doesn't know the name of the teacher. She doesn't know what it was, but something went into her heart then. And from then until she was like literally in maybe her late 40s, she always knew there was something in her heart that just had to open up. And she knew. She said, no question. It was that preschool year. So it's very, very, very special gift. That's huge. Someone else? Someone has something they'd like to share? Bella, Rena, Miriam. I remember a miracle Miriam had. Miriam, do you know what miracle
Everything is miracles. Every day is miracles.
Every day is miracles. But I'm thinking of remember with your son in that car accident?
Well, I had something also. It was a horrible thing happened with my daughter, but at the end, thank God, it happened as what happened. She was attacked by pit bull, and her hand was completely, it was all beaten, and she couldn't use it. But well, she's okay. She's semi-okay.
Oh
the worst case scenario would be usually what happened, she took her dog out and the neighbor's dog, which was the pit bull, attacked her at the time. So the thing was, thank God my daughter came out and she be able to handle that horrible thing. But usually the middle, my granddaughter takes the dog out. So I think it was a miracle.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it was horrible, but at the end, thank God it happened the way it happened. She still suffers with her hand. She's limited in moving her hand, but at least, everybody's okay.
Yeah, wow. Imagine if your granddaughter was there. Wow.
Well, I think it was a miracle. The way everything, it was the best case scenario at the end.
She should regain complete functioning. Should come back completely. Someone else? Everyone want you to come up with something, because I think it's a vehicle to bring down the miracles, is to show God we're grateful for them. So like when Miriam says, I'm grateful because, hey, that could have been my granddaughter and she would not have been able to handle that attack.
No, she wouldn't be able to handle that situation.
Right. So it's, like that. So God says, oh, you appreciate it. You know it was me. You recognize it. And that opens the vehicle for more. So I want everyone to have that merit on Chanuka, because Chanuka is a really special time. It doesn't have to be a stupendous miracle. It could be a small miracle. They're bigger miracles, they're smaller miracles, but something in your heart where you felt God did more than the normal. Like Chav was saying, no, it's not normal that the only good preschool in this town of non-Jews happens to be Chabad. Well, but God doesn't have to always follow the books. It's not normal that Beryl had that surgery exactly when he needed another one, that we couldn't have delayed, and then didn't ever need it again, even though everyone else always does. It doesn't happen. Okay, God could bend the rules a bit. So, God bent the rules. Normally it's your granddaughter there. For some reason it was her daughter exactly when it needed to be her daughter, not her granddaughter. So God's like that in all of our lives. In all of our lives. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to share?
All miracles are inside.
I know. There are so many inside as well. That's why it's hard to think of. I know. And what I do, as I've recommended many times, is I have a Word doc that I write down these miracles. I think it's so important. Just like I have journals and journals of thanking God, I have a Word doc. At one point, I just started thinking back of the things like from before, even when I was younger, what can I remember? So why am I in my brain trying to remember things that happened when I was younger? Because it's a very big thing, if you will. It's the greatest catalyst. The two greatest catalysts I know to create miracles are thanking God for the miracles and trust in the miracles. Trust in the miracles is much harder. Thanking God for the miracles is a much easier thing to do. Though we actually need to do both. We need to do both. I think I don't remember if I shared, someone I know that is going through a crazy divorce situation. And she had a trial recently. And she already got the documents from the children's lawyer. So she knew what she wanted wasn't happening. And I said to her, trust. Well, it's already a done deal. Like there's nothing to trust. It's like over. So what's the trust when it's over? I'm like, for God is never over. What do you mean? God's very creative. Don't look at the hours. I don't care what the children's lawyer said. But my lawyer said that. I said, the judge doesn't know anything. He just listened to the children. I said, doesn't make a difference. Just trust God. And of course, do the extra commandments you took upon yourself, which he has taken upon herself, commandments. Because every commandment is another deposit on these miracles. But the trust is what you must have to pull it through. It's okay. She trusted. I spoke to her again. We talked about it along. She's trusting. And long story short, she had her miracle and the judge did not listen to the children's lawyer and he did give her what she wanted, even though the children's lawyer said differently. God can do, and her lawyer said, in 30 years of working, he's never seen it, or maybe in 30 years he saw this once, that the judge doesn't listen to the children's lawyer. I said, tell your lawyers, because I'm sure they're Jewish, it's because you trusted in God. And she said, yes, all my lawyers are Jewish and all my ex's lawyers are Jewish. I said, of course. So tell your Jewish lawyers it's because you took on commandments and you trust in God. And that's why it happened. Someone else, something else you can thank God for, another miracle that you've experienced. This is Hanukkah. This is a time of miracles. So we remember the miracles, we thank God for the miracles, and we remind God of the other ones we have on our list. And sometimes God's miracles are expected. I doubt Chava had on her list, and make sure my grandchildren go to a Chabad preschool.
It wasn't on my list, but it was in my mind.
It was in your mind. It wasn't on your list of what you were asking for, but it was in your mind and your heart like a whole. And God reads what's in the mind and in the heart, even when you're not pushing him some buttons for. And like Rachel said, sometimes the miracles are the quieter side. They're the miracles inside ourselves. But they're also God's miracles. And we're grateful for them.
Shanna, I remember your miracle. You remember you told me when you cut fire?
Let's hear it.
No, don't put the camera.
Okay, the camera's on me. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. You want to thank God for the miracles. There's a mamash avodah. Okay.
I was with my sister, I read the picture and the candle holder, and I light the candle, and I'm standing and praying. And it was new clothing for me, is right. I just get on with that. And everything is fire here. And fire. And I didn't feel anything. I continue praying. And then I'm looking, everything can burn. All my clothing, nothing in my body. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did the fire go out?
I don't know. Seriously, it was Rabbi, my sister, that you had the candle, and I prayed, and I don't know, I was thinking that, and I saw fire.
And then the fire went out.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was concerned about my clothing.
Well, I unfortunately have many fire stories. I've had many fire miracles, unfortunately, or whatever.
No,
Tell me the miracle. Right. My first one I can remember was actually I was in seminary. So this is a year after high school. And I was a dorm counselor. That year was my second year of seminary. So I was a dorm counselor. And because I was a dorm counselor, I don't know if it was because I was a dorm counselor, but I was in a separate room alone. Yeah, because I was a dorm counselor, I was alone. And so you think there's a privileged room, but actually there was no heat in the room. So they gave me a space heater. And I woke up one night and my blanket all around me was on fire because it had become entangled in the space heater and it was on fire. And I was like, the blanket's right on me and it's all fire. And I don't know what I did. I have no memory of what I did, but like, somehow, like, I guess I somehow got the blanket off of me and it like burnt itself down to the ground. Like, what if I had, like, God forbid, like so many things could have happened. What if I was sleeping and I was alone and there was no one in the room. And that's what they say space heaters are dangerous. That's what they mean. And I just remember very clearly. So here I was alone in my room, a room without heat. And I didn't have a blanket. So my blanket was burnt and I'm frozen. And I'm terrified to put on the space heater. And I'm like, I'm not going to put on that space heater. No way. And I'm in the bed and I'm so cold after like an hour. I'm like, there's nothing else left to burn. And I put on the space heater. But I do remember that. And many, many, many other fire miracles. Say, another fire. I mean, we unfortunately had fire in the school and many, many miracles with that. And I had fire in my house twice. And many miracles with that. All three of my fires, I had big fires and this huge fire in the school, and I had 2 fires in my house. And in all 3 fires, I saw tremendous, tremendous miracles. And if we had the fire in my house, the first fire in my house, I had 2. And the first fire in my house, it was right after B'dikas Chametz. It was the night before Pesach, right before Passover. It was after B'dikas Chametz. And to understand, put it a little more in perspective, I make my house clean for Pesach a week early. So I'm already cooking for like 3 days. My goal is the day before Pesach, I'm relaxed. I come to the Seder, I feel good, I enjoy it. So if, let's pretend the Seder's Friday night, I already have been cooking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for sure. So now it's Thursday night. I mean, pretend it wasn't Thursday night, but I'm saying I don't remember what night Pesach was, but like it's the night after B'dikas Chametz. So we did B'dikas Chametz, and I'm cooking, and I have, of course, a lot of family. My daughters were all cooking and talking, And my sons are all in the living room, and with my husband officially like washing and drying lettuce, but probably not, but whatever, you know, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing, a house full of people, and then I hear the smoke detector go off. And I figure, well, of course I'm baking. So I didn't think about it at all. You know, you're cooking, and a lot of times when you cook, the smoke detector, or at least when I cook, the smoke detector goes off. So I didn't pay any attention to it at all. It didn't even dawn on my radar. I'm in the middle of cooking, and then suddenly wasn't even aware of what happened. But then suddenly, I didn't even aware of the sun. My husband, and then after my oldest son, like raced up the stairs, like it's a real fire. It's a real fire. They ran upstairs for the fire, and I don't even know how my brain computed this. But I'm like, Beryl, who was a baby then, he's sleeping upstairs. I ran up the stairs. The whole first floor was full already of black smoke. I ran into the room and I grabbed Beryl and ran outside. My mother was sleeping then upstairs, right next to the fire, right in the room next to the fire. And she claims I woke her up. I have no memory of waking her up though, because I just know I went in, I took the baby and I ran out, but somehow she said I woke her up. Because then I woke her up, she said, and then she ran outside. And I didn't know this, but my daughter, Musia, who Beryl was probably like a year, so Musia was like 3 or 4, she was sleeping upstairs. I didn't even know she was sleeping upstairs. You know what's going on in my house? I wasn't even know where she was sleeping upstairs. And there were so many miracles in that. First of all, the miracle was she usually sleeps exactly where the fire was. And that night, for some reason, she slept in Beryl's room. And my son, Yosef Yitzhak, one of my sons, knew she was upstairs. I had no clue she was upstairs. None of us had any clue she was upstairs. He somehow, maybe he put her to bed. He knew she was upstairs. So same way I ran and got Beryl, he ran and got Musia. I was totally unaware of anything. Musia wasn't on my radar. We all ran outside. We were all, Baruch Hashem, we were all. Another miracle was my husband and son put out the fire before the firemen came. That's a very big miracle because I saw all the firemen walking in with these picks and axes, all ready to destroy my house. Because that's what they do at a fire. They smash all your walls. You know, that's their job. So I'm screaming to all of them, the fire's out, the fire's out, the fire's out. Because I know they're going to smash all the walls and then they're going to flood everything. So between the water and but much bigger miracle, much bigger meal there was, how did we know about the fire? Because smoke alarm went off. Now, I didn't know any of this because I'm in the kitchen, not paying attention to smoke alarm because of for my cooking. So my husband and sons are like in the living room talking, officially working, and they hear some. And then one of my sons said, this was bothering them more than me. I was busier. And they said, oh, you know, if you go to the smoke detector and you press something, it can stop it. So I don't know why they bothered. They went over to press it, and he pressed it. He's like, no, it's not coming from here. This isn't the like everybody thought that front one was beeping because of the kitchen. He said, no, it's not coming from here. As soon as he said that, my husband realized it's a candle from the Picasso. And like in seconds, my husband raced upstairs. And then my son raced after him, and the two of them put out the fire. Why is that such a great miracle? Besides, obviously, the miracle that they even paid attention to realize that to try to turn off the smoke detector, and therefore realize it wasn't the smoke detector. It was upstairs where there were 3 people sleeping, my mother and Musia and Beryl. The whole real miracle behind this is none of my smoke detectors worked in my house. 2 weeks before this happened, exactly 2 weeks before, Saturday night, it must have been actually Thursday night, because Saturday night, 2 weeks before, there was a horrible tragedy in New York. And there was a house, there was a family, and there was a fire, and they did not have working smoke detectors, and it was a very big tragedy. Yeah. I heard about it Saturday night. And being me, like I imagine many women, I immediately checked all my smoke detectors. And I found 4, none of them were working. One of them didn't have any batteries. One of them, the batteries was in backwards, and one of them, the batteries were dead. So I just smoke detectors on every floor, and none of them were working. And I'm like right away scrounging, do I have AA batteries? And my husband came home, and I remember he came home, and he literally laughed at me. I guess it was by Sunday when I was got all the batteries. He's like, oh my gosh, you really like took this to heart. Like, you know, you're going crazy over this. I'm like, yeah, because of that, 2 weeks later, there were batteries that worked. And the smoke detector was up, and the batteries were put in the right way, and therefore the smoke detector went off upstairs, and that's how we knew about the fire. Because if we didn't, by the time we would have realized the smoke, I mean, I already saw what it was like then. You know, God forbid what could have happened if 3 people are sleeping upstairs.
Yeah, we should all check.
So why your candle was upstairs?
because someone, when they were doing, when you do b'dikas chametz, you search with a candle. So again, I have a lot of people searching because every one of my sons, everyone goes around with a candle and a feather, and everyone gets a b'dikas chametz kit. Everyone has a candle, everyone has a feather, everyone has a spoon, and everyone's given different parts of the house to check. And the person that was upstairs in one of those rooms put the candle down and forgot about it. And the candle just burnt. And then from the burning candle, it was put on like a plastic, like air conditioner cover. It caught on fire. And it was this thick black smoke. My whole top floor was thick black smoke. And it was just so crazy to think, God forbid, what could have happened, but didn't happen because Hashem in his kindness had me 2 weeks before fix my smoke detectors and all the other details. Yeah, I'm sure we all have things like you're saying, we have things and we just.
I have many, just doesn't come to my mind right now. And all the time I'm thanking God that it happened this way, not another way, all the time. Yeah. It's almost every day happens. I even can't keep it track.
So you know what? Think of something from when you were from your childhood. You think of something from your childhood that sticks out? Because sometimes things further away stick out more than something current. From when you were younger, or for some big decision in your life or big situation in your life.
Okay. When I was going to pass tests to university, I went to synagogue. I told, right?
Yeah, but but I didn't hear in terms of passing the test. I just heard about that there was a synagogue.
Yeah. I had, and before with me and with my friend, just it was like open the so that we could go freely to synagogue or churches. We could go, and we went there, and I just was pouring the oil around in synagogue, and I was just praying to get into the university, because the first year I did not pass, and I wanted to do in university. And what happened, I had to go in our university in Tbilisi, Georgia, and this year it went transferred to another small city, Gori. Actually, it was when Stalin was born. Yeah, and I passed with two exams. I passed 5 and 4. 5 I was in geography and 4 in math, and I passed. And I was in the university.
Wow. So you thank God for getting you the correct answers on the test, helping you a little.
I don't know. I just, at that time, actually, I even did not think about this, this situation. I don't know. We were just passing. My friends went to the churches, and I were with them, and then they went with me to synagogue, and I just prayed to let me pass it, to help me to pass the test, and yeah, I did.
Very nice. I think it's amazing that despite everything going on, you still knew to turn to God when you were in the synagogue, and God came through for you. Actually, you're reminding me, my daughter, it wasn't a university exam, but it was her driver's license, and she needed her driver's license. She was going off for the summer. She needed her driver's license. Little problem, she really didn't know how to drive at all. But a lot of times you don't really know how to drive when you get your driver's license. Afterwards, but she really didn't know how to drive. And I have a lot of boys, and all my boys know how to drive like 2 years before they get their license. They're zipping around in cars, they're boys. All my boys are like that, all but one. But my daughter, and I was like, I wasn't sure because I didn't know how to drive. And she really didn't know how to drive, but she needed her license that day. And I said to her, like you can't pass. I mean, what are we even wasting our time? You don't know how to drive. She's like, okay, well, I'm making a deal with God. I said, okay, if you make a deal with God, I'll take you. And she made a deal with God. I don't know what her deal was, but for some bizarre reason, it doesn't even make sense. They gave her a license. They didn't know what they were doing. She didn't know how to drive, but she was probably a danger to the road, but she had her license. So yes, we can pray to God for anything, and God can, I guess, you davened, you prayed, that was good enough. She made her deal, that was good enough, and God came through.
These two, I remember when I wanted to I never drove before. And when I came here, I had to drive because, when I was living in Chicago, my work was close by and I walked. But when we moved to Buffalo Grove, I had to drive to Divan to work. And then I thought I will never get a license. But I took two couple lessons, and almost right away, from the first time, I passed test.
You were good. Like my daughter.
I didn't know how it happened. I don't know.
You know what, Bella, as you're talking, I'm remembering something that you once shared with me. It was, I don't know if you call it a miracle or just so overtly the hand of God, we can call a miracle, right? Very overtly the hand of God. Remember you told me how you worked for a woman in her house, taking care of her, and then just when you were ready to move on, do you remember that whole story? I mean, obviously you remember, it was your life. You told it to me. Do you remember what I'm referring to? Working in a house, you were taking care of a woman in her house. And then you wanted to go back to get a job in computers. Remember the story? It's a long story, you know?
You know what it was? I don't know. I did not listen from the beginning because it was interrupted.
When you were working in the house of a woman, a very wealthy woman, and a very, I guess, a woman that had a lot of merits, because you wanted to leave. But what were the details of that? Also, I remember very much feeling the hand of God in that story.
Yeah, I don't know why, but she liked me. I was like companion with her. I was going there 3 or 4 times a week. And we were going to the walking actually there by the water towers. She loved to walk. She were taking me to eat to the restaurant, and we just were in good relationship, something like that. And after I think and I wanted to, of course, I wanted to get a normal job. Because that time it was just between jobs, and I was thinking about the job normal and like my bookkeeping job. And we were one day after a couple of years, I was there, I think maybe, no, not couple, about a year. Suddenly her daughter-in-law is calling me and said that she passed away. And it was, this was shock. For me, it was shock because it was actually, when I was going there, it was like my regular pay. It was like work pay. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what I'm gonna do right now. The first, I was very upset, of course, that she passed away. She just turned 95 when it happened. I was very upset that she passed away, and then I was thinking what I'm gonna do, how I'm gonna live. And I started to look for a job, and maybe in 2-3 weeks I applied for Ed's Home Care. I applied, and they called me to interview. It was first interview, and the second one was for upper management, and I got the job. And that's what I was thinking, that she was holding me. She did not want me to leave her. That's why I could not get a job yet. And then when she passed away, almost 1 month, not more than 2 months after I got a job.
Right, I remember.
And I'm here, I'm there now too.
Oh wow! I thought it was an amazing story. Amazing story, like amazing story, amazing God's hand and all that. Rachel, we have Rachel and we have Rina. Rachel.
Something from a very long time ago.
Yeah, let's hear something from a very long time ago. It's not interesting.
Reminded me
job. Yeah. Okay.
School and it was,
Okay. Let's hear a non-interesting miracle.
everything was a miracle. My first job, I just came to America, and I had a friend who lived already in America like for more than a year. We worked together back in Ukraine, and he said, I will send you examples of the resume you can send out. Okay, and he said, there is such a software you can add it to your resume. You will open the book, you will learn it.
Smart Jewish women. You really know what's on your resume, whatever.
And I go to the free on divan and the typewriter, and I add this word, comma, to my resume with a different font. And I make copies of this resume. And this is how I found the job. So it was a small consulting company. And I was lucky because before me, she had another employee from Russia. And she probably was happy with this person. I don't know who this person was.
But you owe them. And you brought the book to work so you could learn the program.
Yeah, I learned a lot of things from books. Because when I came, somebody suggested, go to DePaul. I think DePaul had classes for people with at least bachelor degree programming. I was in this field before in Ukraine, but with the language and difference in technology, go there and take some classes. I went there and thousands of dollars. I don't have money, so I had to find a job without it.
Wow.
And this is how it was.
Wow.
I found a job like 3 months after we came.
Wow. Wow.
So what did you add to your resume? IMS. I think it was IMF. It was interactive system screen, similar to CICS. Mainframe, yeah.
So you didn't know it, but you wrote it, and in honor of writing that, they gave you the job. And
yeah,
thank God, God gave you the ability and brains that you picked it up, and they didn't realize that you really didn't know.
And then my son finds out that the company pays for education for school. Go to school. I will help you to apply. So he did help me, but I had to take all the steps, and I did go, and I finished somehow.
Wow!
It was not easy.
Wow! 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 Amazing.
You got bachelor degree. I got MBA here. MBA. Yeah. Oh wow.
Paid for by your work.
Yes.
That's pretty good. MBAs are very expensive.
They paid for everything.
Wow. MBAs are very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive. Wow.
But after full-time work, I was going to.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. It was your end, and it was God's end, and it was the company. Yeah,
so
all worked out.
Everything.
Everything.
Since I came to America, everything was a miracle. I think I'm looking at everything. It was a miracle. The fact that my son said, "Mom, we don't need that and that now," after we came, and then, "Mom, you have to go to synagogue and listen to Shabbat." And this is how I started. I didn't know anything. Somehow it came to us.
Somehow, step by step, miracle by miracle, God guiding you. Absolutely. That's true. Like Bella said, like you were saying, I mean, every step in our life, when we have the eyes to see and the heart to appreciate, The sensitivity, everywhere we look, we see it.
Everywhere
Everywhere we see it. Rena, can you share something? Then we have 100% attendance, 100%.
Okay. 2 years ago, my daughter was pregnant, and she was almost 8 months pregnancy, and then she lost her baby. And she was depressed, frustrating. I was depressed. Every Friday, I start lighting the candle, donate a lot of money. Not a lot. I'm sorry, not a lot. No.
You donated to charity.
No. Yes, almost every day I was praying. My daughter she was pregnant again, and she has a very healthy baby. This is a miracle for us, for our family.
That is a miracle. How old is her very healthy baby now? How old?
7 months.
Wow. Wow. A boy or a girl?
It's a girl.
She should be the first of many children. God willing, she should have many healthy children. We say, it says in the Talmud, a girl first is a good sign for boys. So my first is a girl, and then I had 8 boys. So, and 2 other girls, but I had a lot of boys in a row. And we always said, you're a very good sign. Girl first is a good sign for boys. But we take the boys, girls, God should give us healthy children. And definitely that's an example of a man-made miracle. You created the miracle. You lit the candle. You gave the charity. You prayed. So I remember Chava coming to class once and saying, I made a miracle. It was such a you think we were saying, I made a miracle. God made a miracle. But no, and I was like, she's so right. We make the miracle. We push with the candle lighting, with the prayers, with the charity. We create the miracles, and God, of course, partners with us. He does his part as we do ours. That's a very, very precious miracle. You should have many healthy grandchildren. Again.
Amen.
So I see my husband's about to light the menorah.
If you take a quick break, I'll light, and you guys can continue all night.
All right, for those that haven't seen it yet.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner Chanuka.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam she'asa nisim la'avoseinu vayomim hohem bizman hazeh.
Amen.
I was just reminded of something I learned today about the menorah, because we look at the menorah lighting and it's such a simple, easy thing to do. Imagine you did it at home and it takes a few minutes. You don't have to do it. I mean, obviously it's better to do it with the oil, but we could do it with candles. It's just as legit, the commandment. You buy a box. It's not a very expensive commandment. It's not a very hard commandment. It's something I think Jews all want to do, especially this time of year. We really want to express our Jewishness in a world that expresses other things now. It's very, very, very important. My son today to public school, he wore a hat that says Happy Chanuka. And everybody in the school loved the hat. And I thought they just are appreciating, the proud display of Happy Hanukkah emblazoned across his cute blue hat. So it's easy, it's simple. It's actually incredibly, incredibly powerful. Not just my husband doing it with oil, it is so powerful. It's a very unusual thing. I don't know if people could appreciate that are on the Zoom to see as people here can see. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this angle correctly, but if you see, which I'm not doing this too well. Now, why is the menorah on the left side of the doorpost? We say because we want to be surrounded by the commandments. So on one side, we have the mezuzah, And on the other side, we have the menorah. But there's got to be more to it than that, because no commandments are done on the left. We always do commandments on the right. We always prioritize right. Right? Everything we do, we always prioritize the right for true Kabbalistic significant reason. Right represents God's kindness. Left represents God's judgment. But we always want kindness over judgment. So everything we do with the right. All commandments we do with the right. When we're putting on our shoes, we're supposed to put on our right shoe and then our left shoe. Everything we're always supposed to first do right, because right is kindness and we want kindness. Menorah we have on the left. Why do we have the menorah on the left? Because we're told that regular commandments need to be on the right to draw down God's normal energy that comes down with commandments. But the menorah is more powerful than that. The menorah can draw down the energy that doesn't usually come down. The other energy, the energy that you can't normally access, that's the energy the menorah draws. We have the commandments that we do and the commandments that we do by not doing. We have the positives and we have the prohibitions. We give charity. We do not gossip. So generally, the commandments that we do are in a sense limited to our power of doing. The commandments that we don't do are much bigger than that, because it's not an action of mine, so it's not limited to an action of mine. So commandments I do draw down a certain more limited light. And commandments that I do by not doing, like not stealing, not gossiping, not being jealous, they actually access a bigger light. But I'm not doing them. I'm not doing an action, but I'm accessing actually something even bigger. Hanukkah menorah is the only commandment that I'm doing something and it's accessing the energy normally only accessed by a prohibition. That's how powerful the menorah is. And that's why it's on the left side, to symbolize that it's accessing those left energies, the energies we don't normally get. That's what's coming down through menorah. So I know it's late, and I'm so grateful that everyone shared, and I'm so grateful that people here ate. I'd be very, very disappointed if people didn't eat, because we took the party. You got to eat the party, right? But I really want to just every rest of the nights of Hanukkah, and we got another 6 to go, just to really, even you're doing this very simple act, like you're saying, you almost forgot it. Like, oh my gosh, because it's such a little thing. It's not a big deal. It's not hard. And if you don't have kids around, you're not making a big deal of it. You're just doing it. Just think what you're doing. That's why it's on the left side. You are accessing energy that no other positive commandment can access except the Hanukkah menorah. And how that energy translates into our lives is what we've been discussing this whole time. Miracles. Every one of us, I mean, all the Jewish people, many people out there that need to see humongous miracles. Amen. And everyone should see like the miracles we're asking for, or like Chava says, the stuff in our heart. Or like I was saying, even stuff that we don't even have on our list. God is very powerful, very big, and loves us very, very, very much. Amen. And we should see it. Amen. Thank you so much.